Alright, YouTube, what is up? Um, Interesting one for you today. Um, Now, if if you're a sort of child of the 90s like me, you've obviously got a lot of nostalgia, or you might have a lot of nostalgia for some of the old sort of FMV games. One of which I've had the urge to reinstall recently is a game called SpyCraft, which came out in '96. It's available on GOG, and that's the version I originally purchased many years ago, in fact. Um, but um, there isn't really any sort of, shall we say, remastering that goes into the GOG version. It's not like one of these, Night Dive remasters or something where they put some effort into it. They literally just package the game with DOSBox and release it, and it is what it is. Now, as standard, what I've been doing is running a CRT filter so that at least with old games of that era, it looks more like it should. The pixel art and graphic style very much lends itself to having some scan lines in play and some kind of visual distortion that would have curvature of the screen, this and that. So on a game by game basis, I tweak it. With FMV, however, though, what people may or may not remember is a lot of the time the computers we had were very limited in terms of the ability to render video, full motion video. So, in order to make things the correct size to fit on the CD-ROM or what have you, they would use a technique called interlacing. And interlacing is where every other line in the video is a black line, and you're basically left as the user to squint a bit to make the video, shall we say, not see the lines. So, given that I already was adding some filters, and given that there is this problem with viewing these older videos on modern screens, it led me to wondering. I wonder if there's some kind of trickery I can do using the same plugins that would remove the interlacing. And after some trial and error, it turns out it's actually not hard to do. And in a way, I'm kind of disappointed that GOG don't bother trying to, at least give users an option to do this sort of thing out of the box. So, with that kind of unscripted chaff and waffle out the way, what I'm going to do now is load into SpyCraft. We'll see if this renders correctly, or if I'm going to have to bust out a freaking camera to show you guys this, because there's going to be some, there's going to be some display changes going on. And I'll preface this that the desktop I'm running here is a 2K screen, so 1440p. I tried this at 1080, and it seemed the resolution wasn't enough for this trick I'm going to show you. But if you're running a 1440p monitor, you can greatly increase the fidelity of these games using nothing but Reshade and the CRT filter. So let's just see if this works first of all. We'll launch into the game, and we'll show you the difference, and then I'll show you exactly how I went about achieving this. Now, because we're running Reshade, the game takes longer to load than it otherwise would, so you're faced with a black screen for a while. This will eventually load, but I'm curious to see if our OBS is going to show you what I'm seeing here. So here we go. This is SpyCraft with my filter enabled. Let's just go and disable it now. All I'm using here is the add-on called CrtRoyale. No other plugins, which is worth mentioning. Just disable CrtRoyale, and I'll show you what I'm on about here. You press home to, by default, to toggle if you want to see it or not, to toggle the menu for Reshade. So anyway, this is without any filter on. We go new game.
You want
skip the first bit. Now here you go. This is interlacing, right? See all the lines? Look how it is. But by simply re-enabling the one I made earlier, boom, how much better is that? Now, I think what I'm going to do is quickly show you the settings that are in play, in case you just already know about Reshade and that and just want to skip to that. Basically, the TLDR is, although I've got some of these other things going on just to make things look good, so I've tweaked pretty much most of these settings. I've added scan lines, I've added some curve to the screen, I've made sure the colors and the contrast kind of match what the original was. The real magic that's going on is in this pre-blur. Apply a linear blur to the input image, kind of like an NTSC composite shader, but much faster. So this is really all you need as a subset of the CrtRoyale. And you can see it's a very low setting. All I've done is put 2 on the effect radius and 1 on the sampling radius. But as I undo this, look, they come back. There's the interlacing. Huge difference to how good this looks in my opinion. You just turn this back to 2 and 1 and we've got rid of all those stupid lines. Meanwhile, if we look in our menus and stuff, everything else still looks
Case Officer Thorne,
good.
welcome to
It's got that,
Interlink.
you know, that classic CRT
Your personal
blur to
digital
it, as the
assistant
filter's
provides access to
doing.
4 critical services.
Controlled
The
access.
text is all readable.
Welcome to the
you
Bureau
know,
of
it looks kind of
Alcohol,
as it should
Tobacco,
do.
and Firearms.
Normally what I'd add as well as scan lines, but I've removed the scan lines basically from this since they kind of conflicted with this other hack. But yeah, for FMV games, this is like a deal breaker, and it makes the game infinitely more visually appealing in my opinion. So yeah, TLDR is just this pre-blur setting. Set it to 2, set it to 1, play around with it, and you might find that the interlacing is completely dealt with. I'll show you one more time. Turn it off. Turn the whole setting off. That's without. And that is with. Now the downside to it is because it's a different version of DOSBox. The setup is somewhat involved. You're basically got to take all the config that was done as part of the GOG version and go ahead and redo it in this DOSBox staging. So I'm going to close out of this again now and pause the video, and we're going to get into the actual full tutorial, beginning to end, of how you would go about doing this on your own game. Also worth mentioning, I've only tried this on SpyCraft thus far, but I imagine that anything in a similar kind of resolution that's having the same kind of interlacing, where there's no, de-interlacing patch out there, that's probably gonna work in this way with some trial and error. So yeah, we'll pause the video and then we're going to get into the full step-by-step of how I would port a GOG release over to DOSBox state. Okay then, so during the pause, all I've done is run the GOG installer again. So this is, the vanilla GOG version of the game. And you can see it's created a desktop icon right here. And I've created a folder here for us to work from called SpyCraft Fixed, which is where we're going to deal with our DOSBox staging version. So you're going to go to dosbox-staging.org, and assuming you're on Windows, grab the Windows release. It's important you go for the portable version and not the installer. The reason being is that the installer puts config files out in your user folder in Windows, where we kind of want it in with the game, and if you put it on the portable installation, the config files will be right next to the executable. So what you could essentially do is set this DOSBox staging up, copy it, and then for different games just have this skip these first few steps. I mean, we unzip and configure DOSBox staging. So yeah, no real reason to run the installer for this. So I'd go ahead and choose the portable zip, save it, find somewhere to save it. We'll put it all in our SpyCraft Fix folder. and we will extract it. And basically get all the files into our root and get rid of these installer files out the way. So first thing to do is just run it, and hopefully it's going to generate a config file. Let's go ahead and do that one time. Has not. Interestingly enough. So I did this a while ago, and there was a way, I think, of needing to generate the config file. So let me go ahead and pause the video, and we'll deal with that first, because we're definitely going to need this conf file to proceed, and we're going to need the conf file to be in the format of DOSBox staging, not just copying across from our GOG version. So one sec. Okay, so it's a little bit weird, but I think I found it. First of all, just make sure that this doesn't have any data in this location. If you've dabbled with DOSBox in the past, but otherwise we're going to just need to make this file, and then it's going to populate it. So we're going to go make a new text document, and we're going to call it precisely what it wants here, which is dosbox-staging.conf. It's going to be an empty text file which should get populated right as we run this. We've run that, and there it's written everything out to this dosbox-staging.conf that we are going to need. So something that's somewhat of a side note, or we'll get onto that in a second. Let's go ahead and well, first of all, you can see that we're rendering in OpenGL, and that's what we want, and that's going to be the default for this DOSBox staging variant. You shouldn't really need to touch the config file too much, other than we'll do our per game setup in a moment. What we're going to now do is add our reshade layer, which is basically injecting reshade as a plugin into this executable file. So go ahead and search for reshade. Site is reshade.me, download it. You can see I've already downloaded it, but let's just do it again. Just gonna need to pause my firewall for this, and then go run it. As you run reshade, it's going to ask for the application, so you're going to browse to wherever you saved DOSBox staging to. So in my case, it's this SpyCraft fix, and go ahead and choose dosbox.exe. It's detected OpenGL, that's what we want. And then uncheck all effects, and the only effects we're going to need, really ever, that I ever use is CrtRoyale, to be quite honest. So CrtRoyale. That's done. You can see it's gone ahead and it's added some reshade files here, the ReShadePreset.INI and the ReShade.INI. Furthermore, the next time we launch DOSBox, it's going to have those reshade options available to us. So let's just make sure that works without any game plugged in. You can see it takes a lot longer to load with reshade involved, but eventually it will get there. It will look like it's hanging. It ain't. Give it a moment. And you can see we now have reshade. We can even test it's working. Press home, and then initially you just want to skip this tutorial. And this gives you the main menu where we can just toggle on CrtRoyale, and you'll see that's the default look of CrtRoyale. So we can now quit out of DOSBox staging. and we're going to get on to basically setting up this game specifically, and then tweaking our DOSBox staging profile, reshade profile, to make the game look how we want. Okay, so using specifically SpyCraft as the example. Now, every game might be slightly different in terms of how it calls its config files and whatnot. It's up to GOG to decide how to skin the cat. But with this one, the way I'd usually start is check the icon that they give you on the desktop to see what the properties are, and then you can see it's calling not just the exe, but it's calling this dosbox-staging.conf with some extra arguments here that's not too applicable, but that's where our config file is going to be. So it's right here. In the GOG version, it's dosbox-staging.conf, and then we're going to update our dosbox-staging.conf with the bits that matter. So one on one side, one on the other. Let's just scroll down this and check there's nothing else, because for example we want it to start in full screen. Now probably you know this, but any of these hash marks means it's a comment, and everything without the hash marks is actual config. So I'm going to change full screen to true so that we start full screen. The resolution's going to be at desktop, and then everything else we really don't need to touch, unless you have a reason to come and do so later. Again, we can scroll down and just kind of eyeball all of this to make sure there's nothing else that we need to encompass. The shader there. So DOSBox staging has its own CRT shader that is built in, and we are using our own, so we definitely need to disable any of that sort of thing that's going on. So under GL shader, I believe we can just set this to none. Let's try it. Might be false, or it might not matter, but essentially we want to make sure it's not loading its own shaders in on top of our reshade. Everything else can stay the same. Sometimes you might want to play around with the mouse sensitivity and drop the mouse sensitivity down. I believe that's something I did on my last one, so we'll deal with that if needs be, but just be aware this option exists. And typically right at the bottom is where we're going to get to the meat and potatoes of the config, and it's the auto exec. And what auto exec does is, again, if you're an old head from the DOS days, you'll know what this equates to, but this is basically what runs at startup. So it's how we're going to populate our game information and make DOSBox play the actual game and load the CD-ROM and load the hard drive image. So if we go to our source, you can see they're using a combination of config files here, and this is only really just dealing with the auto exec. That is also gonna be false by default here, so we don't need to touch it. It's just the auto exec lines. Now syntax is different between DOSBox staging and the vanilla DOSBox. And this was tripping me up to begin with. So where we're going mount C into this ... this isn't supported for some reason in DOSBox staging. It would not do it, which is fine. It just means we need to specify some precise folders for this to work. So you can see this data folder, and that's basically our CD-ROM drive of the game. So we can copy or move that out to our StarCraft fixed. Let's copy it in case there's a problem. And the rest of the game files are here in the root of the GOG version, where I'd normally put a HD subfolder. And so that's what we're going to do, is we're going to make a new folder called HDD, and then this stuff, you only really need the stuff that's dated 2012, but not going to hurt anything to copy all these files over here, and it's just going to deal with what it needs. Maybe get rid of the comp files just so DOSBox don't get confused, and obviously the GOG specific stuff we don't need either. Don't accidentally run it like I just did. But anyway, the auto-exec is the part we need to port from our conf. So I'm going to copy and paste it all first. And then we're going to mount C as folder HDD, mount D as the folder data. Without this extra pathing, this is the format that DOSBox staging happens to like, which again is a bit weird that it isn't the same, but that is what it is. So once you've done all that, just go ahead and save the config file, and then we're ready to just make sure the game loads. So run dosbox.exe, and all being well, we should hopefully have a game. This is gonna, like before, this is gonna take a minute because of reshade, where it would otherwise be kind of instant, but we can see our full screen config option has taken. Game is starting in full screen, and there's reshade. So this should now look basically like we had before, and yeah, my mouse sensitivity is quite high. So that's something you might want to drop in that part we looked at earlier. Great, so that's enough to get the game working, and then really all you're going to do is press home to bring up our reshade menu, and then enable CrtRoyale and tweak this how I had it. Now that took me a while, and you know, it's going to be a bit back and forth, so rather than mess around with that now, let's turn it off, quit out. And then what I'm going to do is copy the ReShadePreset.INI from the version I had previously, and then we're just going to go through all those settings. Okay, so all I'm going to do is rename this vanilla ReShadePreset.INI to old, and then copy across the one from the game version that I was playing before I made this video, and this should just load up with all those settings already in play. Alright, we're back in the game, and just by copying that INI file across, it's now as I had earlier. So we'll run our intro again. You can see, you know, the interlacing is dealt with, and the game is running just fine. So all I'm going to do is I will not only will I drop this this preset file into the comments of the video, but we're just going to quickly show you all the tweaks I've made for this specific game, just to give you an idea of what to have a play with. So phosphor mask on this, I've gone with low res shadow. There's different options there. Anything where you're going to see this, it's kind of like a revert to default type thing, but basically I've kind of removed this phosphor mask for the most part. And same with the scan lines. I've dropped the scan line thickness all the way down to 1 here and put it on realistic, but you can see what would happen if I put it back to default, which is 2 and a different beam shape. It just muddies it up a bit, where you know, it's a FMV game. This Gaussian is a bit more expensive, but it brightens the image, so I quite like that. De-Interlace mode, I guess I set it to weaving, and it would be fake progressive by default. Not sure how much that matters. It's another one you can play with. Colors and effects, I had to tweak this somewhat to get this right. So the gamma, the CRT gamma and the LCD gamma I've played with, or the CRT gamma I have, and that's, you know, gamma is what you'd expect, and light, dark. Same with the diffusion. I'd normally have some of this on if I was using scan lines and things and not doing this trick, but I've taken that all the way off. Under screen geometry, this is where you set your curve if you want one. So this is kind of like preference, and Some games I'll have this on, some games I'll have this off. This one I like it. You can set the type of curve you want. Finisher on there, or off. And then, as we kind of touched on in the TLDR, the border is just like some border around the edge, bit of darkness, emulating a CRT. And then, as I say before, the breathe blur is the real money of this hack. By changing these breathe blur settings is what we're doing to actually get rid of the interlacing. So just going to quickly press home. You might need to drop your mouse sensitivity.
Case Officer Thorne, welcome to Interlink, your personal digital assistant.
Just by clicking into the game bit, you can see run a video and it's
Thorne, it's Warhurst. We've got a situation. We're building a team.
gonna look good.
Meet me at Langley in the lobby.
We'll meet him in Langley. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I'm just going to pause the video and consider if there's anything else to wrap up with. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the guide. Just to, once again, in this dosbox-staging.conf, you can, search for something like mouse. Whoops, spell. And you might want to set this mouse sensitivity down to something like 40%, which is, I think, how I had it previously, just to make things a bit more controllable. Obviously, if something isn't quite right for your setup, you're going to need to play with this. As I said before at the start, seems that this is going to need 2K to really get rid of those interlacing lines or above. I guess that 1080 isn't enough, lines drawn to really crop it all out. I'll pop our reshade preset or the version I use into the comments. And if you've got any questions, please do give us a shout. Or if there's any other tutorials you'd like me to cover, let me know. Thanks for watching.